and welcome to the We're Not Stumped podcast. I'm your host, Mike Bolland, and I'm a congenital amputee of the right hand. In this show, I will interview other amputees and allow them to tell you their incredible life stories. I'll also feature family members of amputees and others who support the amputee community, all in an effort to discuss the challenges and triumphs of those living with limb loss. So stick around and listen to inspirational stories and find out why we say, we're not stumped. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the We're Not Stumped podcast. I'm your host, Mike Bolland, and today I welcome Jonathan Cowley. A little bit about Jonathan. In early 2013, Jonathan noticed a lump in his right hand. Neither he nor his doctor thought much of it at the time. He had a 2-year-old to keep up with, and bumps and bruises were par for the course then. However, a few months later, during a family cruise, the situation took a troubling turn. The once minor discomfort transferred into intense pain, and the lump became noticeably discolored, signaling that something was seriously wrong. And we're going to talk about that story and what it was that was wrong with Jonathan today. But Jonathan, first of all, thank you for taking the time for being on the We're Not Stumped podcast.
Hey, Mike, it's great to see you again.
It's always good to see you. We always start the podcast with a segment I call In Your Own Words. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about you and have our listeners learn more about you.
Yeah, well, as you can tell, I'm not an American, although I am, because I became a citizen a number of years ago, but I'm originally from the UK. I'm from the south of England, a small town called Eastbourne, and I spent most of my younger years there, but effectively moved overseas at the age of 21, working around the world, South Africa, China, Asia, Canada, and now in the US. But my background is aviation. I've worked for multiple airlines, including British Airways, who's my current employer, Air New Zealand, and another airline called Caribbean Airlines. So aviation's in my blood. And I also did achieve getting my pilot's license when I lived in South Africa. But the back to the cruise that you mentioned previously. When I was on this cruise, the lump in my palm became more painful, and my hand turned blue, and I couldn't feel my middle fingers either. And it became apparent there was something quite seriously wrong. And we were at that stage considering even going to the ship's onboard doctor, and maybe even coming off at one of the next ports. But I stuck with it, fortunately. Came back to LA and signed a hand doctor when initially the lump was found. And he recommended an MRI, and very quickly came back to me to say that it was a tumor. But again, as he pointed out, not all tumors are bad. It could be a benign tumor. However, he elected to remove the tumor in its entirety. So not take a biopsy, but remove it in its entirety. And then it was sent for biopsy. And the test results took a prolonged period to come back. I believe it was about 6 weeks. So already I was anticipating a not particularly good outcome. And when the results did come back, it was deemed it was a epithelioid sarcoma, which is deemed a very rare form of sarcoma. Very few people in the United States are diagnosed with this. And when I initially was told it was a bad cancer, my response was, because humor is a big part of my life, I said, so that there's good cancers? Which of course he didn't know quite how to respond to that one. But anyway, it was deemed that it was not a good cancer, and I was assigned a doctor at UCLA, an oncologist, and after many meetings, we elected to go in and effectively remove the area around where the tumor site was originally, to try and remove any sign of the disease. That didn't work. So after about 3 surgeries, 2 middle fingers amputated, I was given the option of either starting chemotherapy and radiation, or having an amputation of my right hand. And to be honest, it was, I think, the easiest decision of my life, because I had a young child at the time, Logan, 3 years old, and then I had a baby on the way. And as the oncological surgeon put it, you need to be here for your family. And after a lot of research, I deemed that it was the survival rate was much higher for those who had amputations versus those who went down the route of radiation and chemo. So I had no radiation, I had no chemo, but I ended up having my right hand just above my wrist amputated, and that was over 10 years ago. So it was the right decision. I'm still here talking to you today.
And you're a professional speaker, which we'll get into that in a minute. When I think about what you were talking about, is that kind of cancer, does it typically go to the hands, or could it be anywhere in the body? I mean, that's how little I've heard about this cancer.
Yeah, I mean, I class myself as lucky because it was in an extremity, but this type of cancer can turn up anywhere in the groin. It can end up in the spine. And sadly, when it ends up in areas like that, it doesn't necessarily have such a positive outcome. But as it was in an extremity, they were able to remove it. There was a lot of concern that it could have potentially spread, and that's why I had a number of tests like PET scans. I had what was called a sentinel lymph node biopsy, which is more typical of people who have breast cancer. But they deemed that it hadn't spread, and elected to then move forward with the amputation.
And what was that like? You said the decision was an easy one, but I would imagine that you still had to. There's still some thoughts in your mind, and certainly your family. So, what was that process like when you're first going through that decision?
Well, I think that I'd done a lot of research. So I was, when I went into the meeting with the oncological surgeon, I already anticipated the options that he was going to offer me. So it wasn't, as shocking as I think it might have been for somebody who really didn't anticipate the options. So I'd already discussed it with my wife Michelle, I just, for me, I was going to beat this thing. And looking at the options of chemo and radiation, it wasn't to say that wouldn't result in saving my hand, because that was the other option. I didn't necessarily have to have the amputation. My hand was down to two fingers and a thumb. My surgeon, who was a world-renowned hand surgeon from UCLA, he spoke to me about the options of prosthesis. He was very knowledgeable in what options there would be post amputation. I already knew that if I did have the amputation, there was opportunities to have a hand back, albeit not as flexible as my original hand. So there was a lot of pre meeting thought and discussion that went into this with Michelle. So as I say, I think it's so important to actually do the research, because the last thing you want to do is appear in this meeting and then be absolutely shocked when he says, "I recommend amputating your hand."
Yeah, it's a great way to put it. So arming yourself with knowledge and then being your own self-advocate, I would imagine, is also something very important. What was that like for you? Was there any challenges while you were going through this? You said, you know what, this is what I think, because like you said, I did my own research.
Yeah, no, I think, as I say, I maybe am simplifying a little bit about saying it was an easy decision, because, technically, this is a life-changing moment, using a limb. And I think that I think I was very lucky because I had the support. I had the support of my family. My wife Michelle was incredible. I think it was harder for her than it was for me, because she was the one who had to run around looking after the children, attending all the meetings with me. And my father-in-law also was incredible, because one piece of advice I had from a friend of mine who had cancer as well was, when you go to the meetings with the oncologist, always bring a third person, because you will often find that the two of you, your wife and yourself, a lot of the information you won't remember because it's shocking. So you need somebody at the background taking notes. So I had a huge support from my family. My work at the time was with another airline. I'm with British Airways now, but the other airline, hugely supportive, giving me the time, allowing me to work from home, etc. So I was very lucky. I had a lot of support in place.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, a cornerstone. It's so important to have that support in your corner, as I'm saying.
Right.
And then while you were going through the initial stages, I had read something about you where you did have a prosthetic, and I don't know what kind. We could talk about that, but it wasn't kind of meeting the needs of what you needed. So what was your prosthetic journey like?
So my issue with my prosthesis was I was far too eager. And when I look back on it in hindsight, you often hear people talking about the fact you have to allow your residual limb to calm down. I mean, there was a lot of swelling, a lot of edema, and I just wanted my prosthesis. And my prosthetist at the time said to me, "I'd recommend we wait a bit longer." And I said, "No, I want it now." Because I was very keen to come back, back to some sort of normality. And having one hand for me initially was actually really challenging. I was, I'd walk around with a sling on because I wanted to hide the fact that I'd lost my hand. But in fact, if anything, it highlighted more what was going on, because people were like, why is he wearing a sling? And hang on a minute, it looks like that's a very short arm that he has there. So it actually resulted in far more questions. And I got a lot of inspiration from other amputees who basically said to me, be proud of yourself. We are what we are. Just accept your new norm. And so after a while, it became evident to me that wearing long sleeved shirts in the California summer wasn't going to work. So I ultimately started wearing my short sleeved t-shirts, etc. And I was a lot more comfortable. But that was, it is for all of us. It's a big change, and obviously people stare and people, ask questions. And I just accepted that was going to be the way forward. And now I'm in a very, very good place indeed.
You said something that was so powerful. Be proud. I love that. I think that's that's something that's a great learning experience, and something that you're imparting to others that I think is exactly what's needed. Because sometimes we could all walk around and have our head down a little bit, but I love be proud. That's very good advice. Were you left or right-handed originally?
I was right-handed. So this was huge because my right hand was, gone. And so having to learn to do things with my left hand, writing, etc. What was interesting, my son, who was 3 at the time, he was left-handed as well, or is left-handed. And so we started having competitions to see who could have the best writing, which he won, excuse the pun, hands down. But he did win. But it was adapting. I had to adapt, and obviously initially I didn't know what I could do with the prosthesis. Could I write? Did it have that dexterity, etc.? So I decided, no, I'm going to go with the left because that's my regular hand. And again, doing some research, saw that amputees tend to, even if they have a prosthesis, tend to move to the remaining limb if they still have a limb to do things like writing.
How about the other things? And I'm curious about these things. How about things like eating? Because I know that I have two-handed friends, and if they hurt their hand, they'll be like, "Oh, I guess I'm not eating." It's like, well, you got another hand. So what's the delineation there? Is it like eating? You use your prosthetic, or is there other things?
Yes.
I'm just curious. Thank you.
Absolutely. With my prosthesis, I will, my knife will be in my right hand as it always used to be, and my fork will be in my left hand. So I use my prosthesis to cut the meat, cut the chicken, etc. So nothing has changed there. It's exactly the same. Driving my car, I use 2 hands. Although, obviously a lot of us only use 1 hand because we're eating a sandwich or putting our makeup on or brushing our hair, which we're not supposed to do. But yeah, no, I would say that a lot of the functions I used to do with my right hand, I still do with my prosthesis. Absolutely.
Was your first prosthesis like a hook, like I have kind of in the back there, or was it?
It was not. I went
Okay,
unusually straight to a myoelectric hand, um,
that's cool.
which is, again, at the time, it was 10 years ago. It was, I would say, it was easier to acquire one at that time. As we know, there's a lot of challenges with individuals being able to get prosthesis approved. I never was denied, which a lot of my friends who are amputees are shocked. They're like, you weren't denied by the insurance company. I said I wasn't, but it took forever. I mean, the process took months, like you won't believe. And then obviously, when they did approve it, the out-of-pocket expenses were mind-blowing. It was a case of my wife Michelle was incredible. She said, I don't care what the cost is. We'll refinance the house. You need to have your prosthesis. So, it was staggering to see what the cost was going to be. But at the end of the day, I knew that this was something I committed to. My wife was committed to as well. But yes, that was the main shock. But as I say, back then, it was incredible how I actually got approved, and it was a lot of support from my friends. A lot of friends of mine tried to give me advice, but also friends started helping towards this out of pocket expense. I didn't ask for it. This was before the days of GoFundMe and things like that. But this was just very loyal and very good friends of mine who said, "Look, let's help you." But at the end of the day, we paid the out-of-pocket expense. I got my hand, and I think that one of the things was I was extremely positive and was going to make it work. And the manufacturer of the hand, I'm sure saw some of my posts about how positive I was about it and how it was really helping me return to a normal life. They reached out to me and said, based on how you're saying that our product is really helping you, we'd like to talk to you potentially about being an ambassador for our product. And that's where it went. I ended up becoming ambassador for my prosthesis.
That's OSOR, correct?
That is OSA. It was previously Touch Bionics. A lot of
Okay,
people will have known them as Touch Bionics.
okay.
OSA acquired Touch Bionics a number of years ago, but it's still research and development, I'm proud to say, is still in the UK and in my wife's country of Scotland. So R&D is still done in Scotland, but the company officially is based in Iceland.
And it's called the iLim Quantum Myoelectric. I hope I'm correct
That is
on that.
correct. Yes, that is correct. So it's a fantastic hand. I just, at the end of the day, I am slightly biased, but I do think that I looked at all the other hands that are out there at the time. I had a surgeon who, as I say, was quite knowledgeable, and he encouraged me to look at everything that was available at the time. He said, don't just go with the one brand. And I said, well, don't really have much of a choice. It's designed and built in Scotland, and my wife's Scottish, so I don't think I have a choice here. But I did genuinely look at all the other options. Today, obviously, there's a plethora of upper limb products out there, and with the advent of 3D printing, etc., it's actually mind blowing how many options there are out there. But back 10 years ago, it was a little easier. There were, I think, 2 or 3 potential options.
Wow. And forgive me, I would like to know how those work. Does it work off the muscles that you used to use with your hand? Is that kind of how that works? Or is there different muscles that it picks up?
Yes. So you're on the numbers there. It is the muscles, but it is different muscles. When I open and close my hand, I'm not thinking that I'm opening and closing my hand. What I'm effectively thinking is that when I go to open my hand, I'm thinking that I'm flexing my wrist backwards. And then when I'm closing my hand, I'm thinking I'm flexing my wrist forwards. Now, I don't have a wrist anymore, but I'm thinking that I'm flexing my wrist. And what it then effectively does is picks up the muscle movements via electrodes in my arm and then through magic, I'm not even going to guess how it all works, but effectively those signals are then transmitted into the system, and the hand will open, close, index finger point, etc. So it's different muscle inputs, and very intuitive. It was something that I picked up relatively quickly. I think within a couple of days, I was only dropping about 1 glass a day, but it was very, very quick. I was able to master my hand for sure.
Well, as long as it wasn't a glass of wine, I think we'll forgive you.
Oh, I wouldn't risk a glass of wine. No, absolutely not. No.
I want to talk about you personally too, because as I talk to you, I get a little intimidated because you are a voice actor, and a very successful one at that. You've narrated over 100 audiobooks and are the recipient of Audiophile Earphones Award. I mean, it's amazing. How did you get into that? That's such a great thing.
Well, I think that, being a Brit in the US, although we are, there's a lot of us here, there's not as many as there are Americans, of course. And living in California, I live very close to Hollywood. I wanted to embrace what we do here in California. And so somebody one day said to me, "Oh, I like your voice. You should do voiceovers." And I thought, well, I wasn't actually, that wasn't something I considered, but I looked into it. When I originally moved here, I was employed by an airline, and so my visa precluded me from working for anybody other than that company. So the only opportunity I had to move into voice acting was when I actually moved back to California and married my wife, Michelle, and got my green card. But during the time I was waiting for the green card, I started taking voice acting lessons. And at the time, I didn't know anything about it, and I looked at what options are out there. I didn't even know what an audiobook was at the time. I wanted to be a voice actor. I wanted to be the guy who says, "That's tasty," and get paid $50,000 for saying that. But in reality, that's a very competitive market. And also when I did start working, obviously I had a full-time job, so that wasn't going to be my career. It was just going to be a bit of fun. But then one of my voice actor, who was actually a very successful voice actor coach, who was a very successful actress in the UK, in a police series, she said to me, "You need to think about audiobooks." And I said to her, "What's an audiobook?" And she gave me one. And because back then you had it on a CD. And prior to that, it was, of course, known as books on tape because you had it on a cassette tape. My kids still don't get the whole cassette tape thing. But basically, she said, "Look into it." And I said to her, "Well, how do you get into it?" And she said, "You should go on Craigslist," which is now showing my age, Craigslist. And so I looked on Craigslist, put a few search strings, and it came up with looking for an English audiobook narrator. Again, no experience, but I reached out to them. They called me in, didn't hear from them for months. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, they said, "Oh, we got a book for you." And I said, "Oh, great, I'll come in and record," because they had a studio. And when I didn't even ask what the company name was when I went for the audition. And I said, "Oh, and by the way, what's your company name?" They said, "Oh, we're Random House." And I said, "Oh, like Random House, the international, very large book publisher?" Yes, that's the one. So I did some work for them initially, and then it just started growing, and I started working for other audiobook publishers, not as big as Random House. And then, yes, as you say, I've done over 100 books now, but it's now become very much a hobby. Because I'm in my role that I'm currently in, I'm extremely busy traveling a lot. I tend to travel around the US a lot, and back to the UK. So it's no longer, I'm not able to focus my attention on that anymore. But I still, every now and then, do still get to record a book. So it's still a lot of fun. Love it. And it's what an education. You get to, be paid to read a book and educate yourself at the same time.
What a great story. And I want to ask you another thing, and I didn't ask you about this before. We talked about 10 minutes before the podcast, but I saw you on IMDb, and I just find this fascinating. You played the part of Jim Abbott in Notorious Nick. That is awesome. What was that like? That had to have been incredible.
Well, it was. It was. Well, firstly, being a Brit, baseball. I think I leave after about an hour because I get very bored. So I'm not going to pretend to be a baseball fan. But when I saw this audition, actually, a friend of mine saw the audition and said it kind of just sounds like you because he was right-handed. The age was correct as well. He had a little less hair than I had at the time. I had a fear that they would want me to shave my head, and they said there's just one thing that might be a bit of a challenge. And I said, what's that? They said, well, he's from Flint, Michigan.
Yeah.
How's your Michigan accent? So I straight away realized that was going to be a challenge, not as much as when I auditioned to be a Bostonian, which was far more challenging. But no, I realized that was something I'm going to have to work on. And again, I embraced the fact that I was missing my limb and did initially do a little bit of background work. Often playing a veteran, missing his limb. But this one was a little more challenging because it had lines as well. And it was a very emotional scene. And an incredible actor that I was working with who was playing Nick. But yeah, I had the opportunity of doing this role. I apologize to the state of Michigan for pretending that I was from there. And I'm sure my accent was not representative of the majority of people that live there. But it was fun. I had a lot of fun. It was a day of shooting. Yeah, the movie came out. And every now and then I do say to my kids, shall we? And I just have to say, shall we? And they're like, no, Dad, we've seen it too many times. So they don't want to keep seeing it. But it was incredible. It was an opportunity to represent our community and also represent the positivity because Mr. Abbott was a huge part of Nick's life. And in fact, probably was the reason why he went forward to become a award-winning WWE boxer or a WWE athlete, and with one hand. I mean, there's no others like him, and yet he was able to beat the best. But he did go through initially, a period of uncertainty and not having that belief in himself. And I believe that Jim was a big part of why he continued to follow his dream, because Jim explained to him that's what he did. He failed many times, but he just got up and tried again. And so, it not only was it, as I say, it was a beautiful emotional scene, but it also helped me myself because it made me say, no, you don't give up. You keep trying until it works. But yeah, it was an incredible experience. And again, as I say, I apologize to the state of Michigan.
I ran across that just yesterday, so I haven't seen the movie yet. I cannot wait to see it. And for those that may not know Jim Abbott, he came up with the California Angels in 1986, if I'm not mistaken. He ended up going to the New York Yankees. He was born without a right hand. And in 1996, if I'm not mistaken, he pitched a no-hitter for the Yankees. So I may be off on some of those stats, but yeah, very, very, very great person. And that's so cool to hear that connection. And I cannot wait to see that movie. I'm really looking forward to it. You were talking about a story about your family, and in particular about your young boy, and what he said to you, how he was processing you losing your hand. I'd love to hear that story again.
Yeah, so I think the biggest fear for us was the impact it was going to have on our young son. I mean, Logan was 3 at the time. And, we were told, I had a British, I wouldn't say psychologist. A lot of companies have what they call, EAP programs, the employee support programs. And so I just called the number and got somebody on the other line who just listened, basically. But she said to me, "Don't worry, kids are very resilient, and he'll deal with it." I went as far as talking with my prosthetist to say, "Could I get some Transformer logos on my prosthesis?" So he thinks his dad's a transformer or something like that. And Logan was very excited about that. But one day I can remember we were sitting in the living room. He walked up to me, wasn't even looking at me in the face, and he said, "Dad, the doctor's going to he's going to take off your owie hand and put it in the trash." And I mean, technically, that's correct. That's what the doctor was going to do. Where he was going to put it in the trash, I don't know. But basically, that was a wow moment for me and Michelle, because we realized that he understood it. He didn't seem freaked out about it. It was just, that's what's going to happen. And then as we went through the process of amputation and me getting my prosthesis, ultimately, he would just introduce his dad with the robot hand. And I went and spoke at his school a few times. And even as young as he was at the time, he wanted to tell the class about my hand. He was the one who gave the presentation. And it was, he, fully embraced it and clearly was very proud of his dad. So yeah, he definitely adapted very quickly.
That's a great story, and kudos to you for going and speaking to the children. That's fantastic. With all those life experiences that you're talking about, what is something that maybe you didn't know about being an amputee that you know now and would like to share? Is there anything that comes to mind?
Well, I think that the most important part is about community. I think one of the things when you have that initial diagnosis and are told, well, this is your option, and you go with the amputation, I did initially feel really, really alone, as in connecting with somebody who else was going through that process. And I was connected with the Amputee Coalition, and the Amputee Coalition then connected me with another person who was also a right-hand amputee, and they're very, very careful at trying to get you aligned with somebody who had a very similar process. So they're not going to say, Jonathan, here's a 14-year-old amputee who was born without his right hand. They want to find one who lost his hand potentially through cancer. And they actually did connect me with a young lady who lost her hand. And ironically, it was the same cancer as well, after I was told it was very, very rare. And she went down. It was a very different journey to mine, but anyway, that truly helped me. And as a result, I became very active with the Amputee Coalition. I ended up becoming an advocate for them. I ended up becoming similar to the support I had. I was there as a support for any other amputees that wanted to speak to somebody with the same experience. And I think that's for me, as a message to anybody who's either about to have an amputation or has recently had an amputation. It's really good to talk, and it's really good to talk to people who have been through the same experience as yourself. My first conference I attended was very emotional because I started meeting people with similar amputations. And I just remember, I can't tell you how many people I hugged at the end of the conference, because we had this connection. We felt like family. And I didn't realize that prior to the connection, that we had such a sadly large and very willing community that wants to connect. Now, one thing I did learn the hard way, after I had my amputation, I had my first prosthesis. My wife and I were going on a trip, and I saw a guy at the airport with a lower limb prosthesis, and I had this sudden urge to run up to him and kind of high five him and say, "Hey, brother." And my wife grabbed me by the arm and said, "Yeah, maybe he doesn't have the same kind of approach to you." And I did learn very quickly that, not everybody wants to talk about their prosthesis or their amputation. But now I think I can identify those people. But as I say, it's a life choice. It's a choice of anybody, whether or not you want to talk about your prosthesis or talk about your amputation, but just to know that there is a lot of support out there. The Amputee Coalition is a great place to start.
Yeah, they're going to be having their convention, I believe, in early August in Atlanta. Are you going to be attending that one?
I may well be. At the moment, not certain, but I've attended a number of their conferences when they've been in Vegas and Austin, and it's incredible. Not only is it an opportunity to look at what's new that's out there, but also to hear some speakers who truly inspiring the journey that they've been through. And so, yeah, for me, and it's also an opportunity to reconnect with old friends because you tend to find a lot of the people that you've, known throughout your journey will be at the conference too. So it's a great place.
I went to the one in Palm Springs a couple of years ago, and you had mentioned the prosthetics, and being someone that hasn't worn a prosthetic in over, let's say 40, 45 years, I was shocked and amazed at what's available now. And I think that's a great testament to the different organizations that are actually pushing the envelope and making things for people like us and like others.
Yeah, and your point exactly. I mean, prosthesis isn't right for everybody, and a lot of people like yourself have adapted. I'll be completely honest. I do wear my prosthesis quite a bit, but when I come home, I'll take it off, and I don't use it, and I've adapted. So my residual limb is still very useful. I can do a lot of stuff. And so, I think and that's an important message from my perspective is, I'm an ambassador for this hand. However, when I talk to people, I'm not pushing it. I'm talking about my own experience. And if that is what they make that decision, at the end of the day, people reach out to me who've had cancer and say, I've been asked, would you recommend I have an amputation? And I say, I'm not recommending anything. I'll tell you about my experience and my experience alone. And that's what you have to remember is it worked for me. It may not work for you. But I think that the key message there is hope. People are looking for hope. They want to know that people have survived cancer and that they're around today and what did they do, because maybe I can do the same. But also, to learn about the fact that if I'm going to commit to a prosthesis, which, is a lot of money, is it worthwhile? And again, as I say to anybody who asks me the question, it's worthwhile for me. Whether it's worthwhile for you is a question you have to ask yourself.
Yeah, and although I don't wear one, I believe in them 100%. I think they're fantastic. Yeah,
they are, and I think that it is. It's a great conversation starter. I can tell you that much. In the line of business I'm in, you won't believe the number of people who don't see that I have a prosthesis because I wear a suit when I go to meetings, and my prosthesis has a glove on it. So a lot of people just think I'm wearing a glove and shake my hand, and then all of a sudden they get a very firm handshake. And a lot of people will jump back and go, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize." And then also my favorite is when you have what I call the handshake dance, which is when they look at your prosthesis and think, should I shake the left hand or should I shake the right hand?
Oh, yeah.
And we do this kind of dance back and forth. So, yeah.
I worked in corporate America for a lot of years myself, and I remember being in those meetings. And obviously, with me, I would just put my left hand out like this because.
Right.
But yeah, I would. But yeah, it's funny. This is just my perspective, but at times it feels like they feel like they're imposing on me. It's like, nah, don't worry about it. I've been like this my whole life. Believe me, other people have tried to shake my hand at some point in my life, so we're good. Don't worry about it. It's funny. It was always interesting to have that. I remember one gentleman one time at a pretty big organization. He started shaking my left hand. He's like, "Okay, that's the Boy Scout handshake." I'm like, "Oh, is it? Okay, cool. Yeah. Shake whatever you'd like. I don't care." So what's next? One thing I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to add was so because I travel a lot. Obviously, I'm in airports quite a bit, and often I have kids wanting to come and shake hands with me, and very often the response from the parent is like, "No, don't. Leave the gentleman alone." And of course, I will then walk up and go and shake hands with the because it's all about education, and kids, they're very curious, and I want them to. If that's what they want to do, they want to do that. But my favorite is when I'm at an airport and I go and sit down prior to boarding the flight, and then I plug in my prosthesis to charge it. So there I am, sitting on a seat plugged into a power supply. And I have had fun with a couple of individuals who are like, "Wow, what are you doing there?" I'm saying, "Well, recharging." Come on. So I am obviously part Android, so I do need to recharge myself. So
yes, and you're downloading the world's information right into your hand. That's
there you
that's
go.
Great. So what is next for you as you look forward and you think about your life and what you want to accomplish? I mean, I know you're still a voice actor with British Airways. You're an ambassador. What are you looking forward to in the future?
Well, I think that obviously one of the things that a lot of people don't think about is that, and you can probably attest to this, that when you have one hand, that one hand has a lot of wear and tear, and that's why, I've offered myself up for a number of projects for testing new technologies, etc. Because I'm all about trying to spread the word, help people who are out there. I bump into amputees all over the place who want to, they're very curious. They see my hand, they don't have one. So I think, my ongoing quest is to be there to support others, to give people hope. So I'm hoping that, as a result of our conversation today, that if anybody wants to reach out and say hi, I'd be very happy to do so. I think I've been very lucky. I'm very lucky that I'm still here after such a diagnosis that was dire. And so I'm in this place where I want to give back and continue to give back. So I think my journey will continue to be one of educating and supporting others who are in a similar position. But basically, I have young children now who are starting high school. I want my kids to see the world, because with my job with British Airways, obviously I have access to travel benefits. So we continue to see, we just recently came back from Paris. We went to Rome last year. And I want them to, experience what I experienced, which was seeing the entire world. But I'm very stable in the role I'm in right now. British Airways has recently introduced a group where they're working with amputees who are part of a board that effectively advises British Airways on some of their policies and procedures, and they review what accommodations they've made for individuals with amputations and other, maybe not necessarily visible disabilities. Mm-hmm. And so I'm becoming active with that organization, because I think it's phenomenal that a company is actually having employees who are purely there for the disabled community, and to provide them with the opportunity to give input onto how we develop our products, so that we're considering every passenger that flies with us. So that's very exciting.
That is very cool. Thank you for doing that, and thank you, British Airways, for making it such an important part of what they do. And you had mentioned about giving back, and I know you do. Everything I look at everything you do, you give back quite a bit. So if people do want to get a hold of you, what would be the best way for them to get a hold of you? I think you have a website, if I'm not mistaken.
I do, but I think, I mean, honestly, I think the best way is just simply an email. Okay. I think my email address is my name, basically, Jonathan, Jonathan S like Sam, and then Cowley. So it's Jonathan S Cowley, Cowley, @gmail.com. Drop me a line and, give me a phone number, whatever the case may be, or hit me up on Instagram or Facebook, connect with me there. Although my kids will be mortified that I said Facebook, because apparently Facebook is not as cool anymore. Cool. But hit me up on any of those platforms, and I'll be more than happy to get back in touch, for sure.
Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for your time today. I learned quite a bit, and I know that you're helping a lot of people, and I just can't wait to continue to see how you move forward and continue to give back to the community. So thank you for your time today.
No, thank you again. I really, it's been fantastic meeting you previously, and also having this opportunity to discuss my journey. But if it's okay with you, there's just one last comment I'd like to make, and it's something that during my journey was of a huge benefit to me, and I now share whenever I go to conferences, etc., or speak with surgeons. So one thing that I was recommended to do prior to having my hand amputated was to write a letter to my hand. Now, when I heard that, I was flummoxed. That's a big word, flummoxed. But I thought, what do you mean, write a letter to my hand? Now, this lady I told you on the EAP program, she said, I'm not telling you any more than that. Write a letter to your hand. So thought about it over the weekend, and suddenly started writing. And I was writing with my right hand, because I still had 3 fingers. And I wrote pages and pages and pages. It was effectively memories of everything I'd done with my right hand, including holding my wife's hand when we got married, holding my babies when they were born, flying an aeroplane, you name it. I started thinking of all these experiences. And at the end of it, I apologized to my hand. As I said, we have to part company. However, I hope you understand that I need to survive, and this is the only way I can survive. That was my letter to my hand. And as was explained to me at the time, losing a limb is as traumatic as losing a member of your family or a friend. And we all want to say goodbye before we lose our loved ones or our limbs. So I found that hugely beneficial. I think it definitely helped with my mental state at the time and beyond. So it's just an experience I had and something just to share with people, because I think that it could well help a lot of people to have that ability to say thank you, goodbye, and then move forward with that surgery.
Wow, that's an excellent story. Thank you for sharing it. That is a great bit of advice to give to people. And again, thank you for your time today and for sharing that story, sharing everything you shared today.
You're very welcome. Lovely speaking with you.
That was the We're Not Stumped podcast, hosted by Mike Bolland. If you want to be a guest on the program, reach out to Mike at his email address, mike@mikeboland.com. This podcast is produced by One Hand Man Productions. If you are looking to start your podcast, go to onehandmanproductions.com.